Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, we welcome all of the wonderful devotees who have joined us our YouTube live, devotees who have joined us our Facebook live, and dear devotees who have joined us over Zoom. We welcome each and every one of you to this very special session on Sri Utsavamrita. Before we move forward, we'd like to announce and congratulate the participants of the quiz session from yesterday. We'd like to congratulate Hari Prasad Prabhu, Mother Amrita Radhika, Anjudi, Vaijayanti Lalita Mataji, Mitanjali Pradhan Mataji, Meera Bhushan Mataji, Janeshwar Gauranga Prabhu, Varshana Chitra Mataji, Hari Krishna Madhali Prabhu, and Ranjani Gopika Mataji. Thank you all so very much for participating in the quiz session.
So in today's session, we'll be discussing about the disappearance day of Srila Lokanath Goswami and how Srila Prabhupada came to America. So on disappearance day of Srila Lokanath Goswami, we'd like to remember his wonderful pastimes and activities for our own purification and for the pleasure of the Lord. From his childhood, Lokanath was disinterested in worldly affairs. He actually decided to leave his home and he came to Navadvip to have darshan of Mahaprabhu. Sri Gaura Sundar, he lovingly embraced Lokanath Goswami, instructed him to go to Vrindavan as soon as possible. And Lokanath Goswami arrived in Vrindavan and started visiting various temples in Vrindavan and the different pastime places of the divine couple.
So Srila Lokanath Goswami, he had this desire, he wanted to worship the deity form of Sri Krishna. And Krishna, who is in the heart of everyone, he thus, reciprocating with this desire of Srila Lokanath Goswami, he manifested himself in the form of a deity. And he presented himself before Lokanath. And when Lokanath Goswami saw, when he received this deity, Lokanath, he looked up to see how and who brought this deity. How did this deity just come? But seeing no one present, he began to wonder the mysterious appearance of this beautiful deity of Krishna.
And then seeing Lokanath Goswami in such deep thought, Sri Radha Govinda laughed. Who have brought me here? I have come myself. Srila Lokanath Goswami was beside himself with bliss. He was thinking, for me you have come personally? I'm so fortunate. I don't deserve this, but I will accept it as a gift. And being immersed in that ecstasy, he prepared some foodstuffs immediately, very simple, and offered them to Sri Radha Govinda. Then he made a bag for Sri Radha Vinod, which he kept around his neck. Sorry, I was saying Radha Govinda. His deity's name is Sri Radha Vinod. And he made a bag for Sri Radha Vinod, which he kept around his neck and would travel wherever, and they would be hanging near his heart as he would travel to different places. Sri Radha Vinod was taken care of by Srila Lokanath Goswami as though a rare gem was suspended on a necklace around the neck of Srila Lokanath Goswami. Srila Lokanath Goswami initiated Srila Narottam Das Thakur Mahashaya in the divine mantra of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and Narottam Das Thakur was his only disciple.
And it is said that, how wonderfully Srila Lokanath Goswami would worship Shri Radha Vinod is that he would carry them on his neck, and whenever he had to worship them, he would just put them on a tree, hang them on a tree branch, and he would worship them, offer bhoga to them. And then after that is done, again he would carry them on his neck and then keep walking, because Lokanath Goswami did not have a place of residence. He would go from one place to another all the time. He would just keep traveling all the time. So therefore, Srila Lokanath Goswami used to worship Radha Vinod in this wonderful way. And Narottam Das Thakur is his only disciple. So this week, we are celebrating Srila Lokanath Goswami's Disappearance Day. So we worship and remember him, that the way that how much determination, how much faith, how much sincerity, how much love Srila Lokanath Goswami carries in his heart for Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu and for Krishna, that Krishna himself manifested before him to reciprocate with his desire. So we beg for Srila Lokanath Goswami's blessings, so that one day we may also be aspiring to be receiving Krishna's mercy in this particular way.
And today, on the occasion this week of the incorporation of ISKCON in New York in 1966, on that occasion, we will discuss today how Srila Prabhupada came to America.
So, as we heard that Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, during the last year of his manifested Leela in Sri Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu would sit in his small room in Gambhira, and he would have hours, long night-long discussions with his confidential and dearmost friends, Sri Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy, who are none other than Lalita and Vishakha. And Mahaprabhu would share his heart with them. And on one such special occasion, Sri Gaura Hari, who is the founder of the Sankirtan movement, the Sankirtanai Kapitaro, he reflected and he said that he made his appearance in this age of Kali to give Krishna prem to every living entity without any discrimination. And he thus inaugurated this Sankirtan movement in Mayapur and Nadia, and he brought it to Jagannath Puri as well. And Mahaprabhu reflected and thought that, oh, I spread this Hare Krishna Mahamantra everywhere in India. However, to spread the holy name in every town and village of the world, Mahaprabhu predicted that someone very special will come to take the holy name across the shores of India.
As Srila Lochan Das Thakur, he describes how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaks and predicted in Sri Chaitanya Mangal Sutra Khanda. Jadi papi chari jarma, dure deshe jai, mora senapati bhakta, jai be tathai. If some sinful people escape and giving up religious principles go to far off countries, then my Senapati Bhakta, military commander, will come at that time to give them Krishna consciousness. Thus, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself predicted in Sri Chaitanya Mangal that his own commander-in-chief, who is none other than our very own dearest Srila Prabhupada, will come and fulfill Mahaprabhu's desire of spreading the holy names of Krishna in every town and village of the world. So now, let's take a brief look into the journey, the struggle, the difficulties, the ecstasy that Srila Prabhupada undertook in order to fulfill the desire of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And that desire that he fulfilled was Prithvite Ache Jota Nagaradigram, Sarvatra Prachar Hoibe Moranam. In every town and village of the world, My holy names will be chanted. And because this is the week when we are celebrating the festival of Srila Prabhupada, incorporating the Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON, in New York in the year 1966. So Srila Prabhupada, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, he appeared in 1896 in Kolkata, India.
You can see here in this picture that Srila Prabhupada, as a little boy, was worshipping Sri Sri Radha Govinda. These deities were given to him by his own father, Gaur Mohan Dev.
And then he first met his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami, in Calcutta in 1922. And their very first meeting, when Abhay, as he was called, and his friends respectfully bowed before Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and prepared to sit. Right then, even before delivering anything, before being introduced, he said to them, "You are all educated young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message throughout the whole world?" Abhay Charan was deeply impressed. And 11 years later, in 1933, at Allahabad, he became his formally initiated disciple. And Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, gave Srila Prabhupada two specific instructions, which was repeated by him over the dozen times that they met.
So the two instructions that was given by Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj is that he said that translate the Sanskrit and the Bengali texts in the English language. And whenever you get some money, print books. And the second instruction was?
Spread the holy name of Krishna across the shores of India in the English-speaking world.
This instruction, this picture that we see, is Srila Prabhupada along with his first son. He's meeting Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in Vrindavan on the banks of Radha Kund. So following the instructions of his Guru Maharaj in the year 1944, Srila Prabhupada started a magazine that was published fortnightly, and the magazine was named Back to Godhead. So this magazine was dedicated to persuading the general public that material life was not only the reality, and they should be preparing themselves for the real goal of life, which is to actually go back home, back to Godhead, to rejoin with Krishna, who is the original father. Maintaining the publication for Srila Prabhupada was a great struggle. Single-handedly, Srila Prabhupada, he wrote the entire material. He himself edited it. He typed the manuscripts. He checked the proofs. He himself did the proofreading and even distributed the individual copies of these magazines. So Srila Prabhupada, he practically did everything. You know, writing a magazine, I mean, he did everything, Srila Prabhupada.
Then Srila Prabhupada moved to the holy land of Vrindavan, the place where Lord Krishna displayed his childhood pastimes. He lived there in a very humble and austere way in the historic medieval temple of Sri Sri Radha Damodar. And he had no income, apparently. And he ate very little. He wore some old cloth and spent years in deep study and writing. He did not care for his own comforts. He collected money only to print books. And Srila Prabhupada would intensely cry and pray to Srila Rupa Goswami's Samadhi at Radha Damodar temple so he can fulfill the instructions of his Guru Maharaj. Later, when the disciples of Srila Prabhupada came, like we see here, to visit the rooms of Srila Prabhupada, when Srila Prabhupada was present here, they actually discussed amongst themselves that it would be so wonderful if we can purchase the rooms of this whole temple of maybe Sri Sri Radha Madan of Radha Damodar, where he stayed, and we can get these two rooms as well.
So and this in this picture, as we can see, those of us who visited, we see that on the left hand side there's the kitchen area, and the right hand side was Srila Prabhupada's living quarters. So across, on separating it was this little veranda, very small 2 rooms that Srila Prabhupada had.
And so these disciples discussed amongst themselves, and one of them said, well, we should ask Srila Prabhupada that first before doing it. So they went very excitedly to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, we have this idea that we want to purchase the Sri Sri Radha Damodar temple. Somehow we will arrange it, and then you can stay in your rooms. And Srila Prabhupada, he laughed at them. And he said, you know what? I love those rooms. Those are my memories. A lot of memories are there in that room. But my problem is that I always think big. I cannot think small. Radha Damodar temple, Sri Sri Radha Damodar temple is, in the material sense, smaller than what my vision is. And so I want to build a new temple, which is grand and really big, not the small 2 rooms. So then now we know that the Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir in Raman Reti is the one that has been built, but the devotees have also purchased the rights to those 2 rooms that Srila Prabhupada, 1 room that Srila Prabhupada would stay, and the kitchen that he would cook in.
So one time, Srila Prabhupada's disciples met one Babaji Maharaj. His name is Hridayananda Das Babaji Maharaj from the Radha Damodar temple, who narrated that when Srila Prabhupada used to stay at the Radha Damodar temple, he was a very young boy at that time, before Srila Prabhupada went to the West. And every night, his house was just adjacent to the temple. And every night he would hear wailing sounds of crying. And one night he saw from his own rooftop that Srila Prabhupada, as we see here in the background, that is the samadhi of Srila Rupa Goswami Pad. So Srila Prabhupada, he would actually sweep these floors in front of Rupa Goswami's samadhi in the middle of the night, and he would pray, he would beg, he would cry to Srila Rupa Goswami that please allow me to fulfill the instructions that my Guru Maharaj has given. This is the mood of Srila Prabhupada. So in 1959, Srila Prabhupada, he took sannyas from one of his senior god brothers, and he started his work on the multi-volume translation of the 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada called it his life's masterpiece. And as the years passed, Srila Prabhupada formulated a plan to spread the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra throughout the world in order to fulfill the instructions of his Guru Maharaj.
And Srila Prabhupada says, I planned that I must go to America. And this is in his diary. He said, generally they go to London, but I did not want to go to London. I was simply thinking how to go to New York. I was planning whether I shall go this way through Tokyo, Japan, or that way. Which way is cheaper? That was my proposal. And I was always targeting New York. Sometimes I was dreaming that I've come to New York. Then Srila Prabhupada, he met Mr. Agarwal, who was a Mathura businessman, and mentioned to him in passing, he did to almost everyone he met, that he wanted to go to the West. Although Mr. Agarwal had known Srila Prabhupada for only a few minutes, somehow he volunteered to try to get him a sponsor in America. It was something which Mr. Agarwal had done a number of times. When he met a sadhu who mentioned something about going abroad to teach Hindu culture, he would ask his son Gopal, an engineer in Pennsylvania, to send back a sponsorship form. And when Mr. Agarwal volunteered to help in this way, Srila Prabhupada urged him, please, if you can do so. Then Srila Prabhupada says, I did not say anything seriously to Mr. Agarwal, but perhaps he took it very seriously. I asked him, well, why don't you ask your son Gopal to sponsor so I can go there? I want to preach there. So at his father's request, Mr. Gopal Agarwal had requested a form from the Indian consulate in New York. He obtained a statement from his employer certifying his monthly salary, gotten a letter from his bank showing his bank balance as of April 1965, and he also got the form notarized, all for someone who his father had met in Mathura for some time. It had been stamped and approved in New York and was sent to Delhi. Now Srila Prabhupada had a sponsor. But he still needed a passport, a visa, a P form, and a travel fare. He didn't have any money. So the passport was not very difficult to obtain. Krishna Pandit from the Gaudiya Math helped and got him a passport. And by June 10, 1965, Srila Prabhupada had his passport.
This is the original copy of Srila Prabhupada's passport. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, the reason why we are sharing all this with all of you is that let us try to understand the struggle with which Srila Prabhupada, single-handedly, Srila Prabhupada, and at that age, at the age of 69, Srila Prabhupada, single-handedly, he did all of this. Just why? To fulfill the instructions of his Guru Maharaj. So that is why we can, if we try to understand what all struggles Srila Prabhupada went through, doing all of this, that is why we are sharing all of this. So when his passport, he got his passport now, and he already has his sponsorship papers from Gopal Agarwal. So then now Srila Prabhupada went to Bombay, and because he wanted a ticket for America. And Srila Prabhupada approached Sumati Morarji, who was the chairman of the Scindia Steamship Company. And Srila Prabhupada had met her on his previous occasions, on many previous occasions actually. Whenever Srila Prabhupada would go to Bombay, he would meet with these affluent people, and Sumati Morarji was one of them. And she had given Srila Prabhupada wonderful donations so that Srila Prabhupada could print his books. So, now Srila Prabhupada had already completed the first 3 cantos, the first 3 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam was ready by the donations that, Srimati Sumati Morarji had given. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, he came and saw her and told her, please, give me 1 ticket. This is how Srila Prabhupada begged. Give me 1 ticket.
And Sumati Morarji was very much concerned. She said, Swamiji, you are so old, you're taking this responsibility. Do you think this is all right? And Srila Prabhupada said, no. He reassured her by lifting his hand and saying, to reassure a doubting daughter, it is all right, it is all right. And he again insisted, please give me a ticket. So then Sri Sumati Morarji said, all right, get your P form and I will make an arrangement to send you by our ship. And Srila Prabhupada smiled brilliantly and left her office. And Srila Prabhupada was so grateful to her. You can see after Srila Prabhupada went to US and established ISKCON and came back, you can see how he was met Sumati Morarji and must have told her, look, I reached there and this is what I have formed.
And she is so wonderful. She actually joined Srila Prabhupada in the first big Pandal program in Bombay that Srila Prabhupada had. These are pictures from that Pandal program where Sumati Morarji was invited by Srila Prabhupada. And this was the ticket. This is the ticket that Sri Sumati Morarji gave to Srila Prabhupada. If you see it, if you can zoom in and see that it is written for Bhaktivedanta Swami for 1 passenger from the Jaladuta Scindia Steamship Company, and it is signed Sumati Morarji. So now Srila Prabhupada, he had the ticket, but he had his passport, and he had his sponsorship form, but he needed a P form, which is another necessity for an Indian national who wants to leave the country. It is a certificate which is given by the State Bank of India, certifying that the person has no excessive debts in India, and this person is cleared to travel outside of India. And Srila Prabhupada knew that this would take a while to obtain, so he also did not have a visa to the United States. So he needed to pursue these government permissions in Bombay, but Prabhupada did not have any place to stay. So Mrs. Morarji, Srimati Morarji, she agreed to let Srila Prabhupada reside at the Scindia colony, which is a compound of apartments for employees of the Scindia company. And while living there, Srila Prabhupada would go around during the day to all these different visa offices to get his P form. And then in the evenings, he would give classes on Srimad Bhagavatam in the Scindia colony. And in fact, for few days, he would also go to Sumati Morarji's house, who had invited him to give katha to, her and her friends.
Then Srila Prabhupada had written a page called My Mission, and he would show it to all the influential men in his attempts to get further financing for Srimad Bhagavatam. And this printed statement that proposed that God consciousness was the only remedy for the evils of the modern materialistic society. And despite these scientific advancement and material comforts, there was no peace in the world. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, they are the glory of India, must be spread all over the world. And so his backing by the Scindia Steamship Company, his sponsorship in the US were a strong presentation. And with the help of the people at Scindia, he obtained his visa in July 28, 1965. But the P form proceedings went very slowly and even threatened to be a last insurmountable obstacle. Srila Prabhupada would say, formerly there was no restriction going outside, but for a sannyasi like me, I had so much difficulty obtaining the government permission to go out. I had applied for the P form sanction, but no sanction was coming. Then I went to the State Bank of India. The officer there was Mr. Marthachari. He told me, Swamiji, you're sponsored by a private man, so we cannot accept. If you were invited by some institution, then maybe we would have considered, but you're invited by a private man for 1 month. And after 1 month, if you are in difficulty, there will be so many obstacles. But then Srila Prabhupada said, no, please don't do this. Please, you better send me to your superior. It should not be like this. Please, I want to talk to your manager. And so Srila Prabhupada met the manager, Mr. Rao. He was the supreme man in the State Bank of India. And Mr. Rao came personally and he told Srila Prabhupada, Swamiji, I have passed your case. Don't worry. So Srila Prabhupada was ecstatic. And Mrs. Morarji scheduled a ticket for Srila Prabhupada on one of her ships, the Jaladuta, which was sailing from Calcutta on August 13. Now remember, when did he first meet Gopal Agarwal? June 10, 1965, Mr. Agarwal. And June 10, he just casually mentioned, and then August 13th, he was on his way. Just in little over 2 months. In those days, where there was no internet, everything had to be done personally and manually. Krishna arranged within 2 months for him to sail to the US. So, and Srila Prabhupada was trying for so many years, but when it had to happen, it just happened in 2 months. So Mrs. Scindia, she had made certain that he would travel on a ship whose captain understood the needs of a vegetarian and a brahmana. So Mrs. Morarji told the Jaladuta's captain, Mr. Arun Pandya, to carry extra vegetables and fruits for Srila Prabhupada.
Very well.
And so, following Mrs. Morarji's instruction, her secretary, Mr. Choksi, made final arrangements for Srila Prabhupada. Since Prabhupada didn't have any warm clothes, Mr. Choksi took him to buy a woolen jacket and other woolen clothes, preparing for the cold in New York. And Mr. Choksi spent 250 rupees in those days on new clothes, including some new dhotis as well. And at Srila Prabhupada's request, Mr. Choksi printed 500 copies on a small pamphlet containing the 8 verses written by Lord Chaitanya, Shikshashtakam. Srila Prabhupada took 500 copies of Shikshashtakam on a piece of paper and an advertisement from Srimad Bhagavatam. Then Mr. Choksi drove Srila Prabhupada to the station to catch the train from Mumbai to Calcutta. And then he arrived in Calcutta about 2 weeks before Jaladuta's departure. And that was the story of how Srila Prabhupada started his journey to America.
So then Srila Prabhupada, he arrived in Kolkata, receiving all the documents, everything that Srila Prabhupada needed. He came to Calcutta. And a week before Srila Prabhupada's departure to America on the Jaladuta, on August 6th, Srila Prabhupada visited to Mayapur. He came because he wanted to visit the Samadhi Mandir of his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. This is the picture of the Samadhi where the deity of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is in Mayapur, and Srila Prabhupada prayed to his Guru Maharaj that I am going to fulfill your instructions, please help me. And on his way back from Mayapur, while coming to Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada stopped at Babla in Shantipur.
Actually, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had given this instruction to many disciples. And even on the day when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati gave the instruction, first time met Srila Prabhupada on the top of the Ultadanga Junction Road place, ashram, he had told to everyone, whoever, you are all educated young men. He didn't specifically tell Srila Prabhupada initially. He was telling everyone, then later he said, you should also go. But, and he then later on told to many of his disciples. But Srila Prabhupada took his instruction to heart, took his instruction as his life and soul. And whatever happens, he wanted to execute that, because along with the instruction was the empowerment to do it as well.
Hari Hari Bol. So when Srila Prabhupada came to Babla, Srila Prabhupada stopped here, and this Babla is actually halfway between Mayapur and Kolkata. It's a very beautiful place, as we can see. It is surrounded by mango trees, by coconut trees, which is the beautiful home and the bhajan kutir of Sri Advaita Acharya. This is the temple and the bhajan kutir, the home of Sri Advaita Acharya. And Srila Prabhupada went in and he prayed to Sri Advaita Acharya. In fact, Srila Prabhupada cried to Sri Advaita Acharya Prabhu that, you are the one, my dear Advaita Acharya, who summoned Krishna to come and appear 500 years ago as Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Advaita Acharya Prabhu is the one who called Lord Chaitanya to descend. And he said that now I am going to fulfill this instruction that my Guru Maharaj has given me. Please help me fulfill this desire of my Guru Maharaj. And there was this young boy at that time who was sitting when Srila Prabhupada was making his tearful prayers. And he remembered, because that little boy had grown up when, the Srila Prabhupada came back to Mayapur with his disciples, with his dancing white elephants, and they visited Babla. This little boy had grown up by that time, and he remembered that, oh, I know, and he's the one who narrated this story, that day before going to Jaladuta, Prabhupada had come here to Babla and he prayed to Sri Advaita Acharya for the success of his mission. So it was the day of August 13, the sailing day of the Jaladuta, which was just a few days before Janmashtami and the appearance day anniversary of his own 69th appearance day, which is the day after Janmashtami. So during the last few years, we all know how Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan for Janmashtami. And many Vrindavan residents, they would never leave Vrindavan, especially at that old age. People take retirement and they move to Vrindavan too, so that they can stay there and they can, spend their last days in Vrindavan. And here is Srila Prabhupada, who is ready to embark on a life's mission into the battlefield at the fag end of his life. He was carrying the holy land of Vrindavan in his heart just to fulfill the instructions of his spiritual master.
So Srila Prabhupada took a taxi down to the Calcutta port and he writes in his diary, today at 9 a.m. embarked on MV Jaladuta. Came with me Bhagavati, the Dwarvan of Sindhya Sansir, Mr. Sain Gupta, Mr. Ali, and Vrindavan. Vrindavan is Srila Prabhupada's youngest son, Vrindavan Dev. And Srila Prabhupada was carrying a Bengali copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which he intended to read during the crossing. He checked his essentials, his passenger ticket, passport, visa, P-form, sponsor's address. Finally, it was happening. And Srila Prabhupada says, with what great difficulty I got out of the country. Some way or other, by Krishna's grace, I got out so I could spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Now, this Jaladuta was under the command of Captain Arun Pandya, whose wife was also aboard. As we can see, they respectfully welcomed Srila Prabhupada. And at 9 a.m. on Friday, August 13th, in his diary, Srila Prabhupada noted that the cabin is quite comfortable. Thanks to Lord Krishna for enlightening Somati Morarji for all these arrangements. I am quite comfortable. But on the 14th, he reported seasickness, dizziness, vomiting, Bay of Bengal, heavy rains, more sickness.
So Srila Prabhupada, he was traveling on this Jaladuta, which is actually a cargo ship. It was not even a passenger ship. It just delivers cargo. And Srila Prabhupada had just got this ticket and this small cabin where he could travel. So on the 19th, when the ship arrived at Colombo, Srila Prabhupada was able to get a little relief from the seasickness. And the captain took him, ashore to the city of Colombo by car. Then the ship went on toward Cochin and onto the west coast of India. And Janmashtami, the appearance day of Lord Krishna, it fell on the 20th of August that year. Srila Prabhupada took this opportunity to speak to the crew about the philosophy of Krishna, and he distributed prasadam, which he had cooked himself on board the Jaladuta. Srila Prabhupada made a feast and offered it to Krishna, celebrated Janmashtami on board the ship. And August 21st was the 70th appearance day of Srila Prabhupada, which was observed without any ceremony at sea. And that same day of his appearance, the ship had arrived at Cochin, and Srila Prabhupada's trunks of Srimad Bhagavatam volumes, which had been shipped by Sumati Morarji from Bombay, were loaded on board in the Cochin port. So this is how Srila Prabhupada then formally started. Now from Cochin, then the ship went out into the Red Sea, where Srila Prabhupada encountered great, great difficulty. Srila Prabhupada writes in his diary that there is rain and I'm feeling so much seasickness. There's dizziness, headache, no appetite. I'm vomiting. The symptoms persisted, but it was more than seasickness. He was having chest pain that made him think that he would just die at any moment. In 2 days, Srila Prabhupada suffered 2 heart attacks.
And still, he tolerated that difficulty. He was just meditating on the purpose of his mission. And after 2 days of such violent attacks, he thought that if another attack were to come, he would certainly not survive. In fact, he said that the ship looked like a matchbox in the ocean. It was so turbulent. And on the night of the second day, Srila Prabhupada had a dream. And in that dream, Lord Krishna, in his many forms, in his many avatars, was rowing a boat. And he told Srila Prabhupada he should not fear, but he should come along. And Srila Prabhupada then felt reassured of Krishna's protection, and the violent attacks did not occur again.
So on September 9, Srila Prabhupada records, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we have crossed over to the Atlantic for 24 hours. The whole day was clear and almost smooth. I am taking my food regularly and I've got some strength now to struggle. There is a slight tackling of the ship and I'm feeling a slight headache, but I am reading the nectarian Chaitanya Charitamrita that, I am assured by the Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is with me, and I am reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the nectarian teachings of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The message of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu is the source of all my vitality. And on September 10, by reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes, today the ship is going very smoothly. I feel today better, but I am feeling separation from Sri Vrindavan and my Lord Sri Govinda Gopinath and Sri Radha Damodar. The only solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which I'm tasting the nectarine of Lord Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastimes. I have left Bharat Bhumi just to execute the order of my Guru Maharaj in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. And I have no qualification, but I have taken up the risk just to carry out the instructions of my Guru Maharaj.
And I am completely dependent fully on his mercy, so far away from Vrindavan. During the voyage, Srila Prabhupada, sometimes he stood on the deck at the ship's rail and watching the ocean and the sky and thinking of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vrindavan Dham, and the order of a spiritual master to go preach in the West. We have a question on YouTube Live, and we will definitely answer that question after we complete this entire session. There will be question and answer sessions. We will answer the question then. Thank you so much for your question. Now, this ocean voyage of 1965 was very calm for Jaladuta. In fact, even though there was some turbulence, the captain said that never in his entire career had he seen such a calm Atlantic crossing. Prabhupada replied that this calmness was Lord Krishna's mercy. Remember his dream that Krishna had come and personally was taking the boat across. So Srila Prabhupada wrote in his diary, if the Atlantic would have shown its usual face, perhaps I would have died. But Lord Krishna had taken charge of the ship, has taken charge. And then September 13, Prabhupada noted in his diary, 32nd day of journey, cooked bati khichdi. It appeared to be delicious, so I was able to take some food. Today I have disclosed my mind to my companion, Lord Sri Krishna. There is a Bengali poem made by me in this connection.
And this poem is actually how Srila Prabhupada is saying. It is on almost on the same lines as Markine Bhagavat Dharma, but this is Krishna Tavo Kripa Have Bhai. This is a very beautiful poem that is written by Srila Prabhupada, that how Krishna, my dear Krishna, you are my companion. So after a 35-day journey from Calcutta, the Jaladuta reached Boston's Commonwealth Pier at 5:30 a.m. on September 17, 1965.
And this ship was to stop briefly in Boston before proceeding to New York City. And Srila Prabhupada had to pass through US Immigration and Customs in Boston. His visa allowed him a 3-month stay, and an official stamped it to indicate his expected day of departure. At Commonwealth Pier, Srila Prabhupada wrote another Bengali poem, which was called Markine Bhagavad Dharma, which means teaching Krishna consciousness in America. And the main purport of the poem is, "Oh Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. Oh Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then please make me dance. Make me dance, oh Lord, make me dance as you like." At the end of this session, we will also sing this Markine Bhagavad Dharma poem by Srila Prabhupada.
So Srila Prabhupada, he was basically on his own. He had a sponsor, Mr. Agarwal, somewhere in Pennsylvania. And Srila Prabhupada thought that surely someone would be there to greet him. Srila Prabhupada, he had, no idea at all. Srila Prabhupada is saying in his diary, I did not even know whether after I got down, whether I should make a right or should I make a left. I did not know. So then Srila Prabhupada, he passed through all the dockside formalities, and then finally a representative from Travelers Aid sent by the Agarwals in Pennsylvania came to receive Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada,
he was carrying just $20 that he had collected from selling 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam to Captain Pandya. And Srila Prabhupada, with his umbrella, his suitcase in hand, and still was escorted by Travelers Aid representative, set out for the Port Authority bus terminal to arrange for his trip to Butler, Pennsylvania. Srila Prabhupada, when he reached Butler, he was welcomed by Gopal Agarwal and his good wife, Sally Agarwal, where Srila Prabhupada then stayed for a month along with their son as well. Butler, Pennsylvania, Srila Prabhupada was very comfortable, and he was doing some small programs at yoga centers. Srila Prabhupada thought that this most important teaching of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu should be spread in the most important city of the world, which is New York, and not. So he did not want to stay in Butler for long, and he moved from there after arriving in New York City in September 1965. Srila Prabhupada, he just struggled alone for a year to establish this Krishna consciousness movement. He lived very simply. He lectured whenever and wherever he got an opportunity, and gradually he began to attract some small interest in his teachings. And in New York, in Tompkins Square Park, under a big tree, Srila Prabhupada chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, and slowly many people joined him in his kirtan. And this tree is still preserved as a monument and is considered to be of very great spiritual significance. There is a sign also. It's known as the Hare Krishna tree
in Tompkins
Square Park, under which Srila Prabhupada came and he was chanting and dancing.
We had the great fortune of visiting Tompkins Square Park, and we visited. This is that same tree, the Hare Krishna tree, along with Mababa. We can see here, we are all here at the Hare Krishna tree. And then just near the Tompkins Square Park, Srila Prabhupada started a storefront, which on 26th 2nd Avenue, which was called as the Matchless Gifts. And Srila Prabhupada conducted regular classes there on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Srila Prabhupada conducted classes on the Bhagavad Gita. And in July of 1966, Srila Prabhupada founded a spiritual society intended for worldwide participation, and he called it the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON. And at the time of that incorporation, Srila Prabhupada had not attracted even one committed follower. So everyone was shocked that, Prabhupada, is this what you're registering? Is it going to grow even beyond this Bowery, beyond matchless gift? And Srila Prabhupada, as he had said, I dream big. Srila Prabhupada always says, he quoted in Bengali a proverb which says, Marito Gondar, Lutito Bhandar, which means that if you have to kill, why kill a cockroach? You kill a rhino. Marito Gondar and Lutito Bhandar. Bhandar means you go and loot the entire treasury. Why you want to loot, just, make your hands dirty by doing something small? So it's not that literally go and kill a rhino, but the purport of this proverb is that do something big. And that was what Srila Prabhupada's vision is, that even at the incorporation of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you all are all the trustees, and this is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. This is the magnanimous, the large, life-size vision of Srila Prabhupada. So by 1967, Srila Prabhupada was ready to expand his mission beyond New York City to San Francisco, to Los Angeles, to Boston, to Buffalo, and then on to other countries. And he sent his disciples to London, where they made contact. I mean, this is how Srila Prabhupada was initiating everyone. And then he sent 6 devotees to London who made contact with George Harrison. And George Harrison became very interested in the Hare Krishna mantra, and it became the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, they cut a record, and it grew as it became very popular in the music charts in UK. And this exposed millions of people to the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and it greatly pleased Srila Prabhupada, who immediately flew to London, and he personally met George. And later, George Harrison, he donated a large manor, and he named it Bhakti Vedanta Manor, which is a house in the English countryside. He gave this house of his to Srila Prabhupada, which is now famously known as the Bhakti Vedanta Manor.
And then in his last 10 years of his life, in spite of his advanced age, Srila Prabhupada circled the globe 12 times on lecture tours that took him to 6 continents. And in spite of such a vigorous schedule, Srila Prabhupada continued to write prolifically, and he wrote more than 80 volumes of books which have been translated in more than 70 languages. And under the careful guidance of Srila Prabhupada, this society grew within a decade to a worldwide confederation of 108 temples around the world, gurukuls, and farm communities. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada fulfilled the prophecy of Lord Chaitanya. All over the world, the words Hare Krishna, Hare Rama have been heard on the streets, at the festivals, on the radio, and on television. And these holy names have gone to every town and village. It was Srila Prabhupada's faith and devotion that brought about this colossal transformation.
Hari Hari.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
So Vasudev Ghosh, he has written, Jodi Gaur na hoito, tobe ki hoito, kemone dhorito de. Radharo Mohima, Prema Rasa Sima, Jagate Janatoke. Which means if Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu would not be there, who would reveal the confidential pastimes and the mercy of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna? Who would give us the Hare Krishna Mahamantra if Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu had not been there? following in the same mood of Sri Vasudev Ghosh, Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj has glorified Srila Prabhupada by saying,
Jodi Prabhupada na hoito, tobe ki hoito, e jivan bohito kishe. Nitai Gaurera, apara koruna, kerito shokono deshe. If Srila Prabhupada had not come, what would have happened? How could we have passed our lives? Who else would have distributed the unlimited mercy of Lord Nityananda and Lord Gauranga all over the world?
Hari Hari. So thus we complete today's presentation on Srila Prabhupada coming to America, how Srila Prabhupada came to America. And today we will now dedicate this bhajan, and we will sing the Markine Bhagavad Dharma, and we will dedicate it to all of our wonderful listeners. We dedicate it to the family of our dearest Anjudeep, for Anjudeep's mother, for our dearest Hemangi Mataji's mother-in-law, for our dearest brother, for our very dearest Bhakti Mataji and Krishna Sharanam Prabhu, for our dearest Amrita Radhika, for AJ Nikki and the wonderful family of our dearest Amrita Radhika. May the Supreme Lord Nrsingadev grant protection and fearlessness to everyone. So the lyrics have been shared, and we request everyone to sing along.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Chant.
Guru Kripa Kare Krishna Adha Mera Prati Kira Kira Dite Guru Ache Chuka Jata Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Markine Bhagavad Dharma ki jai.
So before we open up the lines, here's the quiz questions for today.
First, who is the only disciple of Srila Lokanath Goswami?
Second, when did Srila Prabhupada appear?
Third, what are the two specific instructions given by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to Srila Prabhupada?
Fourth, when did Srila Prabhupada meet Gopal Agarwal?
Fifth, what was the main purport of Markine Bhagavad Dharma?
Sixth, what is the purport of the proverb quoted by Srila Prabhupada in Bengali? Thank you so much, dearest Ranjani Gopika, for the wonderful quiz questions. And before we open up the lines, here is the question from
YouTube Live.
YouTube Live, yes. Where is it?
Okay, anyway, we can open the lines while we look for the question.
The question was that is Babla the same place as Shantipur? Yes, Babla is in Shantipur on the way, midway between Kolkata and Mayapur. So Babla is Shantipur. It's a small village in Shantipur city. Okay.
All right, we can open the lines for any questions, comments, or reflections.
Hare Krishna Mataji Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat
All
Pranam.
glories goes to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you so much, Mataji and Prabhuji, for taking us in Jalatuta of Krishna consciousness to travel to across the Boston, and we are able to see with the help of you that Tom Squin, that tree, right? And the tree our Srila Prabhupada has done in first Kirtan over there. That is so wonderful. And we immersed in that whatever Prabhupada faced, we felt really hot emotions, which when he got a 2 times chest pain in the Jalatuta, right? And how Lord Krishna himself came to his dream and he helped. Yeah, I understood yesterday. You both told that the sincerity, right? If you have the sincerity, then you can perceive the transcendental knowledge. But Prabhupada did that, and he gave to us as well, right? Without him, we don't know where we are. Actually, myself, I'm saying I should not say others.
All
Myself,
of us. Where
Without
would we
Srila
be?
Prabhupada, we wouldn't be here. We are speaking
yeah.
together just because of the struggle and the mercy of Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, yes. So I feel like I should not waste this life. So I should engage in Krishna conscious always, because seeing the difficulty, how Prabhupada has faced all the difficulties for whom? For all of us, right? So to engage in Krishna conscious to deliver us, he suffered a lot, and he is there still. I believe in books. Yes, everyone told the same. So we don't feel like our grandfather is far away. He's our grandfather. So he is with us in the books, and he is giving. I mean, he's coming to us through you as well. He's giving the transformation and lecture. Everything I feel he's not. He's there with all of us, and wonderful narration. Wonderful narration. I don't know how to say express my feelings over that, but really very very taking us. But I feel only one thing, right, Prabhuji? Like why the session is ended now. I feel why it is not going more than hour, because when Raghunath Goswami says like 3 hours lecture, right? I feel like why it cannot be 3 hours lecture. I feel in Vrindavan he said, right? But anyway, I will conclude here. So thank you so much, Prabhuji and Mataji. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhu.
It is because you have so much taste in hearing that you just want the hearing and chanting to continue. Wonderful.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Accept my obeisance. Wonderful session. And then we hear we have read we read Srila Prabhupada books. We go to the temples, do everything, but until we hear Prabhupada's pastimes, starting from Mumbai, come to Calcutta, coming to America, we really can't appreciate what Srila Prabhupada has done for us. We take it for granted, but the struggles he went through, and that's why it's called the Shakta Avatar. Nobody else can do what he has done, and he continues to live in his books for us. So, and you brought it to our life. And until we hear this pastime, we really can't appreciate what Srila Prabhupada has done. We are given a silver plate, and unfortunately, somebody like me is given a silver plate and still can't make the best use of it. It's sad, but I'll try my best, and with blessings of senior devotees like you, hopefully I'll make progress. But again, thank you so much for bringing this pastime for Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavad Pranams.
Krishna.
Oh, I'm sorry. Looks
Please
like
go
we
ahead,
are
Prabhu.
clashing.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what a beautiful narration, even though it took, it took like 1 hour, but felt like, it went so fast with all the life and everything, the struggle and the problems Prabhupada went through. Sometimes it brought tears to my eyes, through the trouble he went through, because for us, actually, he did for everything else, of course, I always think, without Prabhupada, where will we be? He has given everything. He has given what to do from wake up early in the morning until you go to bed. He has given everything that, that is needed, the temples, the worship and the prasadam and everything. It is so, so nice. And for his selfless service. Thank you again, Prabhupada. Thank you for you too for narrating such a nice story. Thank you, Prabhuji Mataji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. It just brings so many tears to our eyes. This morning I was working and Kalasudha was preparing the slides and everything else. And suddenly I saw that she's crying. And I was like, hey, is everything okay? And I was in the meeting, so I kind of paused it and I said, are you okay? What happened? Why are you crying? And then she's saying, look, Prabhupada says that on the boat Jaladuta, on the ship, he was having bati khichdi, which means just a bowl of khichdi. And he has gone through so much, and Kalasudha was really emotional about this. So
No, even
yes, we
about
really
it. I mean,
appreciate it.
we read it so many times.
Yeah.
We have read so many times your Ever Well-Wisher and Prabhupada's Leelamrita. Every time we read, it always brings this one thing in forward to us, that if Srila Prabhupada was not there, where would we be? Where would we be? Even maybe we would have been, I mean, I know from my personal life, I would have been dead long ago. And according to my astrological chart. But and what would we do with what kind of struggle Srila Prabhupada went through in his life? As you said, the Bombay struggle, coming to Calcutta, and single-handedly doing everything.
He had 2 heart attacks
on the way.
After one heart attack, I don't know, we would have said, turn it around, turn the ship around, I want to go back. And even if we would have gone back, no one would have said anything. Everyone would have said, yes, good try. You tried to fulfill the order of your spiritual master. But Srila Prabhupada, no excuse. If I have to die, I will die on the battlefield of preaching, of fulfilling the order of my spiritual master.
And this gives us, Srila Prabhupada's struggle, Srila Prabhupada's sacrifices. It gives us, that burden of love that we have received from Srila Prabhupada, that Srila Prabhupada gave to us so selflessly. He gave us Krishna, as, devotees were sharing. Janeshwar Gauranga Prabhu said, on a silver platter, we have got it. So it is our duty now to get the silver platter over to other living entities, to other jivas, bring them to Krishna, give them this opportunities. And that would be our Pushpanjali, our offering of, souls to Srila Prabhupada in the form of, our flowers that we offer to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet every morning should be the offering of souls, bringing them to Krishna, bringing them to Srila Prabhupada. That way we can reciprocate with what Srila Prabhupada has done for us. To what extent? We can never repay the debt of Srila Prabhupada. We can never do that. But this way, at least, we are trying to do something in an insignificant way, to try to give this Krishna consciousness to others, bringing them to Srila Prabhupada. That's the only thing that we can do, to try to do something in reciprocation to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, Prabhuji. You are doing such a wonderful job. I wish I could have seen or met Prabhupada when I was young, but it's better late than never, they say. So, I didn't get a chance to meet, and get into Krishna consciousness when I was, kind of young. But, as I said, it's better late than never. So at least he gave us this Maha Mantra, I'm chanting all the time. That's all I can do now. So thank you, and you are doing a wonderful job. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you for all you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Mataji,
Hare
Dandavat
Krishna,
Pranam.
Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you so much for this wonderful session. You just take the whole tour of Chalduta with Srila Prabhupada. So wonderful, and so yeah, you really truly say, Srila Prabhupada gave us a full plate of prasadam, and now we just have to distribute that prasadam to everyone. We have to bring all the living entities to Krishna consciousness, and that is our duty, and we have to follow our instructions like Srila Prabhupada follow the instructions of his Gurudev. We have to follow the instructions of our Gurudev. And you said, when Guru Maharaj gives some instruction, it will come with empower. So please bless us, even Mataji and Prabhuji, so we can also fulfill the desire of our Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada mission. We can fulfill it. So wonderful service. So you both are doing, Mataji and Prabhuji. Koti Koti Dandavat Pranam to both of you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Mitanjali Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji Prabhuji. Wonderful session. Especially I liked when Srila Prabhupada was preaching the magazines of Back to Godhead magazine, and he was doing alone. Really, it is very beautiful. And Mataji Prabhuji, I want to ask a question that what is the meaning of white elephant?
No, Srila Prabhupada referred to his Western disciples when he was coming back to India after the success of his first world tour. Srila Prabhupada was coming back to India, I think 71. Srila Prabhupada was coming back first time, and Srila Prabhupada came with his entourage of his, initiated disciples. So Srila Prabhupada, he called them his dancing white elephants because they were white, white-bodied devotees. So Srila Prabhupada lovingly called his Western disciples as his dancing white elephants.
Because elephants are quite common in India, but a white elephant, everyone wants to come and see. And dancing white elephant is much, much more rare. And so Srila Prabhupada wanted to attract everyone through his dancing white elephants who are dancing to the tune of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
He said, my dancing white elephants will come with me to help me revive the Krishna consciousness in India. That's why in that context, Srila Prabhupada said dancing white elephants. So all the Indians will come to see the dancing white elephants and they will take to Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Mataji, wonderful explanation. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Hare Krishna. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
If not, we can end here. Thank you so much for listening to this wonderful nectarian pastime of Srila Prabhupada. And we request everyone to please like, share, and subscribe on the YouTube channel Advaita Kalasudha and press the bell icon for updates. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Patitanam
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda
Vrinda
ki
ki
jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Prabhuji Mataji ki jai.
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 Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji
Mataji.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Dandavat
Mataji
Pranam.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Mataji Prabhuji. That with Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.